I once watched a man lose everything in less than 3 minutes. Not his money, not his job. Something far more difficult to rebuild. It happened in a quiet office behind a closed door with only 2 men present. No shouting, no fists, just words and the lack of control behind them. The other man said almost nothing. He leaned back, listened, and waited. While one spoke with heat, the other spoke with restraint. And when it was over, one walked out lighter, steadier, strangely untouched. The other walked out knowing, without being told, that he had lost. Most men believe confrontation is a contest of dominance. They think the man who speaks faster, louder, sharper, must surely win. Yet I have seen the opposite decide fortunes, reputations, marriages, and futures. The real battle is never between 2 men. It is inside one. Think of the last time you were challenged. A remark that felt disrespectful. A tone that struck your pride. A moment where your chest tightened and your mind rushed to respond. In that instant, you were not deciding what to say. You were deciding who was in control. I have studied this pattern across boardrooms, homes, negotiations, and conflicts that shaped entire lives. The man who reacts loses power immediately. He hands the reins of his inner world to the very person who provoked him. And once that happens, the outcome is already written. There is a reason some men seem untouchable in conflict. You notice it instinctively. They do not rush. They do not explain themselves unnecessarily. They do not defend their ego. And somehow, the room bends toward them. Authority gathers where control lives. Self-control is not silence for its own sake. It is not submission. It is not fear. It is strategy at the highest level. It is the ability to remain sovereign while another man reveals his weakness. And weakness always reveals itself first through loss of emotional command. Many men have been taught the wrong lesson. They believe strength is shown by immediate response. They confuse impulse with courage. Yet the man who cannot delay his reaction cannot direct his outcome. He is predictable, and what is predictable is easily defeated. Consider how many opportunities were lost, not because you were wrong, but because you spoke too soon. How many relationships cracked not from lack of truth, but from lack of restraint. How many confrontations replay in your mind, not because you lost the argument, but because you lost yourself. Every confrontation is a mirror. It shows you whether you are governed by impulse or by law, whether you are reacting from habit or acting from decision, whether your emotions command you or you command them. There are laws that govern this, as surely as there are laws that govern wealth and failure. Ignore them, and you repeat the same confrontations year after year, growing older but not stronger. Obey them, and conflict becomes an advantage instead of a threat. Most men never learn these laws because they mistake noise for power and aggression for authority. They chase the appearance of winning and sacrifice the substance of control, and life punishes that mistake without mercy. What you are about to hear are not tricks, phrases, or clever replies. They are laws of inner command, laws that determine who holds the upper ground when pressure appears, laws that allow you to walk into confrontation calm and walk out with your position strengthened. But understand this, these laws will expose you. They demand discipline. They require that you abandon the comfort of reaction for the mastery of restraint. They will not flatter your pride. They will strip it down and replace it with something far more effective. If you listen casually, nothing will change. You will nod, agree, and repeat the same conflicts in new forms. But if you listen as a man who intends to rule himself, these laws will follow you into every difficult conversation, every challenge, every moment of pressure. There is a reason some men rise while others argue, a reason some are respected without explanation, a reason some never need to prove themselves. That reason begins with self-control, and it ends with authority. The first law reveals why silence often wins before a word is spoken. The second explains why emotional restraint unsettles the aggressive. The third exposes how timing outweighs force. And each law tightens your command one layer at a time. Do not rush ahead. This is not something to consume. It is something to absorb. Because once you understand these laws, confrontation will no longer feel dangerous. It will feel familiar. And familiarity is power. Listen as though your future reputation is at stake, because more often than men admit, it is. Law 1. The law of inner stillness. Every outward victory begins with inward silence. When a man governs his own emotions, he governs the entire situation. The first test in every confrontation is not of intelligence, but of composure. I have watched men lose fortunes, friendships, and years of progress in moments where their tongues ran faster than their reason. Yet I have also seen men of quiet restraint rise without struggle, for silence is the sign of one who has learned to command himself. You cannot hear opportunity when you are busy defending your pride. The man who rushes to prove himself reveals he doubts himself. The one who must explain his strength has already lost it. True mastery begins when the mind is no longer disturbed by every sound around it. The still mind sees angles the noisy mind cannot. It listens, it measures, and when it moves, its movement has meaning. I once knew a young clerk who served in a busy office of industry. He was intelligent, ambitious, and full of energy, but he lacked control. One morning, his superior corrected him sharply before several men. Pride flared, and he replied with equal sharpness. The room fell silent. His superior said nothing more, but 2 days later, another man sat at his desk. That man had witnessed the scene, said nothing, and returned to his work. Within months, he was promoted. The difference was not talent, it was stillness. That moment taught me that silence in the presence of provocation is not weakness but strength in reserve. It is the difference between a spark and an explosion. A spark can be directed, an explosion cannot. Most men are destroyed not by their enemies but by their inability to contain themselves. Inner stillness is not passivity. It is power waiting for its moment. Andrew Carnegie understood this better than most. When others argued, he would lean back, hands folded, and let them exhaust their certainty. He would then speak a few sentences, each measured and deliberate. The debate would end not by force, but by gravity. The room felt that he had seen farther, while others were blinded by their own voices. He ruled not by dominance, but by calm authority born of stillness. A single pause can save years of regret. A man's reputation can collapse in one uncontrolled moment. A harsh word once spoken cannot be recalled. A rash letter once sent cannot be erased. But silence has never destroyed a man. It has only revealed him. The power to withhold reaction is the power to reshape destiny. I tell you this truth, the man who can delay reaction has already changed his destiny. Every pause between impulse and response is a doorway to higher ground. Most men close that door by speaking too soon. They rush to fill silence because silence makes them uncomfortable. They mistake it for weakness, yet in truth, silence is a weapon forged by patience. It confuses those who thrive on reaction, for they cannot fight what does not respond. When I began my long study of success, I learned that stillness multiplies perception, while noise blinds judgment. The noisy man sees only the surface. The quiet man observes the cause. Stillness sharpens hearing, not of sound, but of truth. While others chase the flicker of emotion, the calm man traces the root of events. He is not carried away by the storm, for he stands in its center. Self-control grants time, and time always favors intelligence. The man who can wait a moment gains an advantage over those who cannot. Every second of restraint enlarges vision. When emotion clouds the mind, time clears it. The wise therefore treat calmness as currency, spending it only when necessary. Those who spend their energy on argument have none left for creation. Most men lose everything in the first 30 seconds because they speak from heat, not reason. Heat burns the mind's wisdom before it can form a sound plan. Once you have given away your calm, you have given away your advantage. Remember this: power leaves the man who loses temper. It returns the moment he recovers silence. Consider the example of Thomas Edison. When investors mocked his inventions, when critics laughed at his failures, he did not defend himself. He smiled, listened, and returned to his laboratory. They exhausted their ridicule. He converted his composure into invention. Years later, the same men who doubted him sought his favor. His patience was not mere endurance. It was faith that truth, once proven, requires no defense. A man's reaction is the mirror of his maturity. The child strikes when angered. The wise man builds. The strong man wins battles through preparation, not provocation. I have seen more men fall from wounded pride than from actual defeat. Their anger becomes their executioner. They speak words that cost them trust, respect, and peace, all because they could not bear silence. Inner stillness is discipline at its highest order. It is not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of it. Every emotion left unchecked becomes a chain. Every emotion properly directed becomes a tool. The man who rules himself can use emotion as fuel. The one who is ruled by it will forever serve those who can. Do not mistake stillness for timidity. A tiger crouches before it leaps. The mind that pauses is gathering its strength. Those who cannot hold still long enough to observe will always strike blindly. The most dangerous man in any confrontation is not the loudest, but the calmest. His silence unsettles others because they cannot read it. They project their own fear into his quiet and defeat themselves. In all my years observing men of power, I have learned this secret. Men yield instinctively to those who seem unshaken. The calm man appears larger than the moment, while the angry man appears smaller than his own words. Those who cannot be provoked cannot be defeated, for provocation is the first step toward surrender. I recall once observing an argument between two industrial leaders. One grew red with fury, pacing the floor, demanding satisfaction. The other remained seated, hands folded, eyes steady. He waited until the other exhausted himself, then said, "Are you finished?" and calmly stated his terms. The matter was settled within minutes. Later, I asked the composed man how he remained so calm. He replied, "When a man loses his temper, he hands me the steering wheel." That single statement contains the essence of mastery. Stillness is the invisible armor of kings. It guards judgment against distortion and protects reputation against ruin. It allows reason to stand when emotion would flee. The world belongs to those who can wait a moment longer than others. When emotion passes, truth remains, and truth always belongs to the calm. Let this truth be written upon your mind. Stillness is not emptiness, but control of motion. The ocean's power lies beneath its surface calm. So it is with a man of mastery. His strength is hidden, his movements measured, his silence purposeful. When he speaks, it is because he has already won the inner battle. Let me offer you this affirmation. Speak it until it becomes your nature. I am calm under pressure. I am master of emotion. No man can pull the strings of my mind. I remain still until I decide to act. Repeat these words until they are woven into the fibers of your being. For thought repeated becomes belief, and belief becomes habit. In every encounter, remember, you are never required to match another man's haste. You owe no answer to insult, no defense to pride. You owe only obedience to your own standard. When another man loses control, do not join his downfall. Observe, think, and act only when your reason commands. Many years ago, I met an elderly gentleman who had served under several industrial magnates. I asked him what he had learned from witnessing so many leaders. He said, The man who keeps his voice low when others shout will one day command those same voices. His words were simple, but they concealed an eternal law. Noise is temporary. Control endures. Stillness is the soil from which all mastery grows. Without it, your knowledge, courage, and purpose scatter like leaves in the wind. With it, even limited means can produce great results. For stillness channels thought, and thought directs power. The world may appear to reward the loud, but time always crowns the calm. Mark this truth. Anger can be imitated, but calm cannot. A man may pretend confidence, but he cannot fake stillness. It is earned through discipline, reflection, and mastery of thought. When you see a man who moves deliberately, who speaks sparingly, who listens more than he talks, you are seeing a man who has won the only war that matters, the war within. If you cultivate this stillness, others will begin to feel it. They will trust your judgment, follow your lead, and fear your disapproval. Not because you demand it, but because your self-command demands respect. Your calmness will become your signature. People will say, "He cannot be shaken." That reputation is more valuable than any argument won in haste. I say to you now, master silence and you master the outcome. In every heated moment, remember that the man who reacts loses control of the field. The one who pauses owns it. Every confrontation is decided not by words, but by who remains still the longest. For stillness is the highest form of strategy. It allows time to serve you and emotion to serve your purpose. When the next challenge arises, do not rush to meet it. Observe it. Let others speak. Let them reveal themselves. In that quiet moment, you will know precisely what must be said and how and when. Then speak, but speak only once. Let your word carry the weight of calm authority. For calmness, once established, bends every storm to your will. This is the first law of self-control, the law of inner stillness. All strength begins here. Without this foundation, no other law can stand. The man who cannot remain still cannot direct power, cannot choose his reaction, cannot master fate. But the man who can, he saves years of turmoil, countless regrets, and wins battles others never knew were being fought. Remember always, master silence, and you master the outcome. Law 2, the law of delayed response. Every confrontation tempts a man to act immediately. The impulse to speak, defend, or strike back is one of life's most dangerous instincts. The average man mistakes reaction for strength and speed for wisdom. Yet greatness begins where urgency ends. The man who learns to wait, even for a single breath, gains power over those who cannot. Delay is not hesitation. It is the deliberate pause of intelligence before action. Reaction is slavery. Response is command. The difference is one of control. A man who reacts belongs to the moment. A man who responds makes the moment belong to him. I have seen entire enterprises lost because a single leader answered too soon. The man who must have the last word rarely keeps it, for he has already yielded to emotion. The one who pauses commands all who cannot. I once knew a salesman of remarkable charm and promise. His clients trusted him because he was quick with wit and faster with words. Yet one day, after receiving what he felt was an unfair complaint, he wrote a letter filled with anger. He mailed it without rereading. By morning, his client had canceled every order. That letter destroyed a decade of goodwill. A lifetime of talent collapsed in a single reaction. Contrast this with Charles M. Schwab, one of the ablest men to ever rise under Andrew Carnegie. When criticized harshly by associates, he would not answer at once. He would smile, excuse himself, and take a day to think. When he returned, his words were mild, yet filled with reason. His composure dissolved opposition like water on flame. In every quarrel, his delay transformed anger into understanding. And it was this quality that made men follow him willingly. Delay turns emotion into advantage. It gives time for passion to cool and judgment to sharpen. Emotion is heat, thought is light. Together they can forge progress, but only if heat is contained long enough to give light direction. A man who cannot wait for that balance will always burn what he could have built. He will trade permanent gain for temporary satisfaction. I learned early that men who act at once under provocation are governed by others. Their strings are held by anyone who knows how to pull them. The insult of a fool can steer them as surely as reins on a horse. Only when you can stand unmoved before provocation have you earned the right to be called master of yourself. Think of Abraham Lincoln. He carried more criticism than any man of his age. Newspapers mocked him. Rivals betrayed him. Even his allies doubted him. Often he wrote letters of rage, brilliant, sharp, devastating in argument. But he never sent them. He would fold them, place them in a drawer, and sleep upon his thoughts. By morning, his anger had turned into insight. His restraint preserved alliances that later saved his nation. The world remembers his wisdom. It forgets his withheld fury. When you delay reaction, you transfer control from impulse to intelligence. The first moment after insult belongs to emotion. The second belongs to wisdom. He who lives only in the first will forever regret not reaching the second. It is in that second moment that greatness is born. I often tell my students that a moment of silence can alter the course of a life. I once met a man who told me he had nearly struck his business partner in anger during a disagreement. He stopped himself, left the room, and took a walk instead. When he returned, he found his partner ready to apologize. That single act of delay saved not only their company, but their friendship of 20 years. One pause accomplished what 1,000 words could not. Steel is shaped by heat, but tempered by cooling. So it is with a man's nature. Heat alone produces force, but without cooling, it produces fracture. The mind must learn to cool itself, for every man is tested by fire. The difference between a strong man and a shattered one lies in how long he can remain still before he acts. Repeat these words until they are carved into your habit. I do not react. I respond with purpose. I hold my fire until its aim is certain. These are not idle sentences, they are laws in motion. For what is repeated in thought becomes command over the subconscious, and the subconscious directs the body with perfect obedience. Speak them until the body obeys calm before it knows anger. When you delay, others reveal themselves. Impulsive men show their weakness by their haste. They talk too much, concede too much, and expose what they mean to hide. The patient man collects their words like tools. He learns their patterns, their fears, their true motives. Thus, while others waste energy displaying themselves, he quietly gathers power. I once witnessed a negotiation between two companies. One side entered the room full of fire and impatience. They interrupted, demanded, boasted of other offers. The opposing leader said little. He asked brief questions, listened, and took notes. Hours passed. By day's end, the impatient men had revealed every secret of their position. The quiet leader had given nothing. He won the contract not through brilliance, but through restraint. His silence had been strategy. His delay had been design. Men begin to respect what they cannot provoke. They call it mystery, but it is only discipline. When they cannot draw a reaction, they sense strength beyond their reach. They will either yield or align themselves with it. This is why calm men attract followers, and why leaders of nations are remembered not for their noise, but for their timing. Patience is not weakness. It is invisible strength. The river carves mountains not through force, but through persistence. The man who controls timing controls the terms of every exchange. He decides when to speak, when to act, and when to walk away. Every impulsive man becomes his servant without knowing it. When a man learns this law, he saves not only minutes, but years. The impulsive man spends decades repairing what he damaged in seconds. He apologizes, explains, and rebuilds what could have been preserved by one pause. The disciplined man builds forward while others rebuild backward. His restraint becomes compound interest upon his destiny. Do not misunderstand. There are moments when swift action is necessary, but those actions are born of preparation, not impulse. The man who trains his mind in calmness can act instantly because his decision was made long before emotion entered the scene. The soldier who stands firm under fire has already conquered fear in private. So too, the man who answers calmly has already fought the battle within before words were ever spoken. Men who live by reaction age quickly. Their days are filled with regret, their minds restless, their hearts burdened by what they wish they had not said. But the man of delayed response walks lightly. He carries no debris of regret, for he has learned that nothing must be said until it serves his purpose. Silence is not absence, it is choice. Let me tell you another story. A young entrepreneur once came to me for advice. He had quarreled with a financier who accused him unjustly. In anger, he intended to publish a letter exposing the man's faults. I told him, wait 1 week. Reluctantly, he agreed. Within that week, the financier was exposed by his own hand in another matter, and public opinion turned without a word from my student. Had you answered, I said, you would have shared in his disgrace. Delay had defended him better than eloquence ever could. To the untrained, waiting feels like defeat. They confuse silence with submission, just as they confuse noise with leadership. But time reveals that the man who controls pace controls the race. He who slows down what others speed up gains the vantage of foresight. Delay, properly used, is not postponement. It is precision. Every successful man I have studied possesses this quality. Carnegie, Ford, Rockefeller, all understood timing as power. They knew that rushing decisions leads to waste, and that waiting for the right condition multiplies success. They were not idle. They were deliberate. Their quiet hours produced wealth that others' noisy haste destroyed. If you practice this law, others will begin to adapt to your rhythm. They will wait for your answer before deciding their own. They will measure their speech by your silence. This is leadership of the highest order, governing by presence rather than pressure. And it is won only through restraint. Let me remind you that words once spoken can never return to silence. They live, they travel, they build or destroy beyond your sight. Therefore, make your speech as valuable as your time, rare, deliberate, and measured. One well-timed word can accomplish more than 1,000 spoken in haste. Delay transforms confrontation into reflection. When you do not answer immediately, the mind of the other man begins to speak to itself. He starts to question, to reconsider, to see himself through your calmness. Often his own conscience will fight your battle for you. Silence becomes your advocate. Time becomes your ally. Men will call you patient, disciplined, even cold. Accept those words, for they mean they cannot move you. The world has always mocked what it fears. But history remembers the man who waits, not the man who interrupts. The loud voice fades. The steady tone endures. The man who controls timing controls the terms. He writes the invisible rules of every encounter. He knows that to rush is to obey the will of another, but to wait is to make the world adjust to his pace. That is the essence of sovereignty. The crown is not worn on the head, but in the mind that refuses to be hurried. Repeat again these words and make them living law. I do not react, I respond with purpose. I hold my fire until its aim is certain. Say them in moments of anger, and you will find power growing where weakness once ruled. Each repetition builds a fortress of calm within you, brick by brick, thought by thought. Remember, the quickest hand does not always win the game. The man who plays 2 moves ahead wins it before it begins. Delay gives space for vision. Vision gives control, and control gives peace. Those who obey this law save 10, 20, even 30 years of needless repair, for they no longer live at the mercy of every provocation. Let the world rush. You shall rule by rhythm. Let others demand immediate answers. You shall provide decisive ones. Let others burn their chances in heat. You shall forge yours in patience. For in every confrontation, Time reveals the master, and the master is always the man who waited one moment longer. Law 3, the law of directed energy. Energy is the essence of life itself, yet energy uncontrolled becomes destruction. A man is given daily a measure of power, through emotion, thought, and desire. Whether it builds or breaks depends upon the direction he gives it. The same fire that lights a forge can burn a house to ashes. The difference is control. Every man feels anger, fear, passion, and ambition. These are the raw fuels of greatness, but without direction, they scatter. One who spends energy in resentment drains himself before he begins his real work. One who wastes passion on argument has none left for progress. Nature gives every man fire. Wisdom teaches how to aim its flame. I once knew a worker who was humiliated before his fellows by a thoughtless superior. His pride burned like molten metal. For days he dreamed of retaliation, but one night he said, "I will use this insult as a hammer." He poured that fury into perfecting his skill. Within a year, his superior reported to him. Anger directed had turned from poison to power. Henry Ford was of this nature. He despised inefficiency, delays, and waste. That emotion could have made him bitter. Instead, he harnessed it. His irritation at confusion became his drive for simplicity. His resentment of waste became his system of precision. The world called it industry. In truth, it was discipline made visible. Every emotion can be your slave if you remain its master. Emotion, I have found, is neither good nor evil. It is energy. A mind without emotion is a lamp without flame. Yet a flame without glass burns wild and dies fast. Control gives it purpose. The undisciplined man scatters energy in many directions. The disciplined man concentrates it on one chief aim. That focus creates miracles. Thomas Edison failed more than 1,000 times before success greeted him. Many men would have turned disappointment into despair. Edison turned it into fuel. Each failure added pressure behind his purpose. His energy was not wasted in complaint. It was gathered in persistence. A mind directed toward creation cannot be defeated by frustration. There is no greater tragedy than a man who feels deeply but acts without aim. He fights everyone and accomplishes nothing. He confuses motion with progress. His heart is strong, but his mind is without a map. And so his passion burns him instead of warming him. I tell you, every feeling contains fuel. Anger, when directed toward justice, builds. Sorrow, when directed toward growth, enlightens. Desire, when directed toward purpose, enriches. Even fear, properly used, becomes caution and clarity. The mind must become the dynamo that channels emotion into achievement. In my own study, I discovered that those who reach greatness are not those who never feel emotion, but those who never serve it. They feel everything, yet obey nothing but their purpose. They have learned that control does not kill emotion. It crowns it. It gives power shape. Repeat this daily until it becomes your truth. I turn emotion into motion. I do not waste power on resentment. Every feeling becomes fuel for my purpose. Speak these words each morning, for they remind the subconscious that emotion must serve, not rule. The world mistakes calm men for cold men. It does not see the furnace beneath their calm exterior. Their restraint is not lack of fire, it is perfection of control. Others burn out quickly, they endure. They do not reveal their power until it is needed, and when they act, the effect is extraordinary. Others will begin to notice your steadiness under provocation. They will wonder at your patience, your silence, your composure. They will not know that you are gathering energy while they are losing it. Men defer to those who cannot be moved. Your calmness will disturb the untrained, for they sense strength where they cannot see its source. Remember this: untrained emotion burns the very house it was meant to warm. Anger, unmanaged, poisons judgment. Jealousy blinds vision. Excitement without reason breeds disaster. The disciplined man does not suppress these energies. He transmutes them. He makes servants of his emotions, not masters. Andrew Carnegie himself began with little. He felt deep anger at the poverty around him, but he did not curse his fate. He resolved to build wealth not merely for himself, but as proof that poverty could be conquered. His youthful indignation became the foundation of industry. He learned early that energy, when harnessed to purpose, is the architect of destiny. The greatest waste on earth is human emotion left uncontrolled. It fills hospitals, ruins businesses, destroys families, and breeds regret. Yet the same emotion, disciplined and turned toward a definite aim, builds empires, discovers inventions, and writes symphonies. The power is neutral. The direction determines destiny. If you wish to know your future, look at where your energy flows. Are you feeding resentment or building a plan? Are you nursing wounds or forging tools? The law of directed energy will not forgive waste. It multiplies whatever you give it, either progress or destruction. When you feel anger rise, do not suppress it, redirect it. When sadness comes, turn it to reflection. When envy stings, let it become inspiration. Every emotion is raw material. Only the craftsman knows what to make of it. Mark this: the man who controls his emotion controls his fate. The man who wastes emotion on reaction remains a slave. For life will never cease to provoke, but provocation loses power when energy is trained. Power is not loud. Power is focus. Power is direction. And that is the third law of self-control. All power begins with emotion harnessed to purpose. Law 4, the law of invisible advantage. There exists a kind of power unseen by the eye and yet felt by all who encounter it. It is the advantage that belongs to the calm, the silent, the self-controlled. While others lose temper and reveal weakness, the composed man gains knowledge, opportunity, and control. Self-control grants unseen leverage in every encounter. I have witnessed it countless times. The man who grows loud loses his position, for noise exposes him. The man who grows still gains ground, for silence conceals his depth. When others lose temper, they lose perspective. In the heat of emotion, men reveal their intentions, their fears, their entire strategy. The calm observer collects their secrets without asking a question. In every heated exchange, the cool mind becomes the observer, and the observer controls the board. Conflict blinds the impulsive, but illuminates the disciplined. The man who listens learns more in 5 minutes than the angry man learns in 5 years. Restraint is not absence of will. It is intelligence and command. I once observed a young negotiator faced with competitors far older and louder. They argued with one another so violently that they forgot the purpose of the meeting. He remained silent, taking notes, studying every word. Within weeks, he proposed a plan that used their own arguments to his advantage. His calm had been his spy, their emotion, their confession. J. Ogden Armour was of similar mind. When his rivals argued over the price of acquisition, he said little. He let them exhaust themselves in vanity. Their quarrel ruined the deal. Days later, he bought the same assets for half their price. Their anger was his profit. The calm man gains what the impulsive man spends. Restraint makes others overconfident. They mistake your silence for uncertainty, and in their pride, they expose themselves. They underestimate the man who does not compete for attention. Yet in every contest, the unseen strength wins. Emotion is noise, control is clarity. I tell you now, the man who remains calm becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. The angry man can be steered, for his reactions are known. The composed man cannot, for his stillness conceals direction. That mystery draws respect, even fear, from those who cannot read him. In a storm, the sailor who fights the wind capsizes. The one who waits for its turn sails forward. Life's winds of conflict are no different. The wise do not fight every gust. They wait for the shift, then move with it. The fool spends his energy battling what could have carried him. Repeat this truth in thought and deed. My calm confuses the impulsive. My patience disarms aggression. My composure is my weapon. Say it until you feel its reality, for composure is indeed a weapon, silent, invisible, decisive. Every word withheld adds weight to those you finally speak. The man who talks less is heard more, for people lean in to catch what he chooses to reveal. The silent man compels curiosity, and curiosity grants influence. The more he withholds, the greater the value of his voice. When meetings end and tempers cool, people remember not the noise, but the one who stayed calm. They recall the man who smiled when others shouted. They seek his counsel later, for calmness implies certainty, and certainty attracts trust. Thus the silent man governs without command. Charles M. Schwab's composure once turned fierce critics into partners. When others attacked his ideas, he did not defend. He thanked them, considered their points, and quietly improved his plans. His enemies left disarmed, even ashamed of their temper. His calm earned him both respect and wealth. Men of steel trusted him because he did not lose his. Self-control, unseen yet unmistakable, makes others yield ground voluntarily. It turns opponents into allies, not by persuasion, but by presence. You will notice, when you remain calm under pressure, that others unconsciously adjust their tone to match yours. The faster they speak, the slower you will answer. The louder they grow, the softer you will sound. And soon your calmness becomes the standard of the room. He who governs himself governs others without command. Authority flows from composure. The leader need not raise his voice. He need only raise his standard of control. Men sense instinctively that one who governs himself can govern circumstance. They follow not his words, but his steadiness. This law cannot be faked. Pretended calmness crumbles at the first blow. True calmness is the fruit of practice, the daily discipline of measured thought, controlled breath, deliberate action. It is not a trick of behavior, but a habit of being. It must be built in silence before it can shine in conflict. You may test this law. The next time you are provoked, remain perfectly still. Say nothing. Watch how the other man becomes uneasy. His energy rises. Yours remains steady. He begins to question himself, for your silence reflects his own lack of command. He fights not you, but his own loss of balance. That is the invisible advantage. Power does not always declare itself. Often it hides beneath a quiet exterior, but the wise recognize it immediately. They know that stillness under fire is worth more than brilliance in peace. For anyone can appear confident when untested. Only the self-controlled remain calm when everything trembles. When I first began my studies, I believed power was external. Titles, wealth, command. Years later, I learned it was internal. Composure, patience, mastery. Outward power without inward control collapses under pressure. But inward control creates outer influence that never fades. Mark well the fourth law of self-control. He who governs himself governs others without command. For the invisible advantage of calmness conquers all visible force. Law 5. The law of the inner mirror. Every confrontation is a reflection. A man never meets the world. He meets himself through it. The words, tones, and gestures that disturb him reveal his own unmastered nature. What angers you reveals where you are weak. What you can overlook reveals where you are strong. Thus, conflict becomes a mirror, cruel, accurate, and endlessly faithful. I learned long ago that no insult can wound a man who has no wound to touch. The sting we feel from others' words is proof of an inner bruise not yet healed. The man who answers insult with anger is really fighting himself. The one who remains calm has already conquered within. The world cannot disturb a man who has mastered his reflection. I recall the story of a humble craftsman whose work was mocked by a rival. He smiled and said, "My creation will answer you in time." And it did. His patient labor stood while his critics' pride collapsed. The wise man uses conflict not to strike others, but to reveal the flaws still hiding within himself. Every provocation is a chance to polish the soul. Until you master your own reflection, you will meet the same lessons again and again. Only the faces will change. I have seen men quarrel with new partners, new friends, new employers, believing their misfortune followed them, when in truth it was only their own temperament returning in different forms. The outer world simply mirrors the inner. I once counseled a leader who lived in constant anger. He believed his subordinates disrespected him, his peers conspired against him, and fate singled him out. But when we examined his conduct, he discovered his anger was not toward them, but toward himself, his inconsistency, his self-betrayal. Once he corrected his discipline, his world became calm. His enemies vanished, not because they changed, but because he did. Henry Ford possessed this mastery. He faced ridicule from engineers, financiers, and newspapers. They mocked his simplicity, his ideas, even his appearance, yet he never fought shadows. He said, "Time will tell," and time did tell. His critics' words faded, but his factories roared. Ford proved that the man who governs his reflection need not defend it. Let me give you a truth that will save you years of turmoil. No man's opinion of you can harm you unless it matches your own doubt. If you have conquered self-doubt, insult becomes harmless. The arrow of criticism strikes only where the armor of faith is thin. Strengthen faith, and words cannot wound. Repeat this until it becomes instinct. I do not fight shadows. I master the man in the mirror. Every insult teaches me where I must grow stronger. Every repetition polishes the mirror. Every act of restraint cleanses the glass of your perception. And with every step, you see the world as it is, not as your fear distorts it. Self-control is inner correction disguised as outer composure. The calm man is not cold. He is honest with himself. He has looked into the mirror long enough to know his own weaknesses, and therefore others cannot use them against him. The proud man hides his flaws. The wise man studies them until they lose power. Thomas Edison once said that ridicule was proof he was ahead of his time. That remark alone reveals mastery. He understood that the world's judgment is rarely about truth. It is about the comfort men feel when you conform. Those who disturb the ordinary invite criticism, but also greatness. Each time you hold your reaction, you polish the mirror. Each outburst clouds it again. If your vision of yourself is blurred by anger, you will strike where you should have learned. But if your vision is clear, you will rise where others stumble. Peace in conflict is the final proof that the inner man has matured. The man who observes himself in conflict evolves faster than the man who defends himself. Self-observation is the highest discipline, for it demands honesty beyond pride. It is not enough to win arguments. You must win yourself. For every quarrel outward hides a quarrel inward, waiting to be resolved. This is the fifth law of self-control, the law of the inner mirror. The world cannot disturb a man who has mastered his reflection. Law 6, the law of strategic withdrawal. True strength often appears as retreat. The untrained call it weakness, but wisdom knows it as mastery. The man who can walk away wins twice, first over the situation and second over himself. Pride keeps men in battles long after reason advises withdrawal. But pride has never built anything enduring. I once knew two business partners. One was consumed with proving his importance, the other cared only for progress. The first stayed locked in quarrels, the second walked away, started anew, and built a greater fortune. The world remembers the one who withdrew, not the one who fought. He chose himself over impulse, and destiny rewarded him. Andrew Carnegie practiced this law with grace. When tempers rose in a meeting, he would say, "Gentlemen, we shall resume when reason returns." He knew emotion was fog upon the mind, and no good road can be found in fog. His retreat was not defeat. It was a reset of advantage. By walking away from confusion, he preserved command. Strategic withdrawal is not surrender. It is preservation of power for a wiser time. The wise do not waste energy proving they are right. They use energy to build something that proves itself. The fool exhausts himself in petty victories. The wise man gathers strength for meaningful wars. Teach yourself this truth. Life's greatest opportunities appear after you release the need to win every skirmish. Many men have lost kingdoms defending small castles of pride. He who knows when to withdraw keeps his resources, his dignity, and his freedom to strike again when the field favors him. Say this aloud when tempted to fight for ego's sake. I do not chase small victories. I withdraw with dignity and return with strategy. Let this be your code. The impulse to prove is the enemy of progress. Those who cannot step back will be pushed back by life itself. Many ruin lifelong relations by insisting on the last word. They win arguments and lose allies. The last word belongs not to the loudest, but to the most enduring. It is written by time, not tongue. The man who walks away calmly leaves his words to history, and history speaks more kindly of restraint than rage. John D. Rockefeller was such a man. He built alliances by ignoring insults. When rivals mocked him, he smiled and said, "We shall see." While they raged, he planned. While they shouted, he expanded. When they tired, he bought them. The world called him ruthless, but his ruthlessness was discipline disguised as patience. A man measured by silence and timing will always appear larger than one measured by noise. Those who can withdraw at will inspire respect, for they cannot be cornered. The opponent who cannot draw you in begins to fear your stillness. That fear becomes your invisible armor. A lion does not answer barking dogs. He saves his roar for the hunt. Do not waste your strength on those beneath your purpose. Every man must decide whether he will spend his energy proving his pride or preserving his destiny. Choose destiny, and you will always walk away richer. Control means choosing your battle and choosing yourself over impulse. That is the sixth law of self-control, the law of strategic withdrawal. The power to step away is greater than the power to strike. Law 7, the law of supreme mastery. The final proof of self-control is quiet authority. The man who commands himself commands fate itself. When a man reaches this level, he does not conquer others, he orchestrates them. Self-control has matured into presence, a silent force that moves men without words. I have met such men. They walk into a room and the air changes, not by power of position, but by mastery of spirit. They are calm in every storm. They decide tone, tempo, and timing. Others instinctively follow. Their authority is invisible, yet irresistible. A statesman once told me how he turned enemies into allies. His secret was simple. He refused to mirror hostility. When others shouted, he spoke softly. When they accused, he inquired. When they attacked, he smiled. In a year, every one of his rivals began to speak in his tone. Calmness had conquered the field without one blow. Andrew Carnegie's calm dignity had the same effect. Men entered his office ready for conflict and left in agreement, unsure how it happened. His quiet confidence disarmed resistance. They realized he needed no approval to proceed, and that certainty demanded cooperation. At the highest level, confrontation ceases to be conflict. It becomes orchestration. The self-mastered man no longer reacts to life. He conducts it. Every event, pleasant or painful, becomes an instrument in his design. He no longer fears difficulty. He uses it. Every reaction restrained adds another stone to the foundation of mastery. Say this until it is written into your character. I am the calm in every storm. I decide my tone, my time, my destiny. My composure is my crown. For composure is indeed a crown, polished by patience, worn by wisdom, and recognized by all who have eyes to see. The mastered man becomes magnetic. Others feel secure in his presence because his energy is ordered, his emotions balanced, his will definite. He does not need to announce his control. It emanates quietly from him. In a world of chaos, calmness is a throne. Success, wealth, and influence follow men who radiate calm power, not noise. Look through history: Ford, Edison, Lincoln. Each faced storms of doubt, mockery, and failure, yet each remained composed under fire. Lincoln stood calm while his nation tore itself apart. Edison smiled through 1,000 failures. Ford answered criticism with production. Mastery made them immortal. When you control yourself, even misfortune obeys you. You turn it to wisdom, as the alchemist turns base metal into gold. Defeat becomes instruction. Loss becomes preparation. A mastered man cannot truly fail. He simply transforms circumstances into progress. Each confrontation either deepens mastery or exposes its absence. The undisciplined repeat the same mistakes for decades. The disciplined learn once and ascend. Those who practice these laws save decades of error, regret, and repair. They move forward while others circle their emotions endlessly. The impulsive man spends 30 years apologizing for 10 seconds of temper. The disciplined man avoids those 10 seconds entirely and gains those 30 years for creation. That is how mastery saves time, fortune, and peace. Now I tell you plainly, this is how you save 10, 20, even 30 years of your life, by mastering control before pain must teach it through repetition. For every uncontrolled reaction invites years of correction. Every restrained reaction adds years of freedom. To win any confrontation, win yourself first. All outer battles are shadows of the inner. The man who has conquered within cannot be conquered without. Now speak this final affirmation with the conviction of a sovereign mind. I am steady, I am silent, I am master of myself. No man commands me but the man within. I walk calm through every storm, and I decide how every battle ends. When this truth becomes the rhythm of your thought, your presence will change. Doors will open, voices will quiet, confusion will dissolve in your calm. You will no longer need to prove yourself, for mastery is its own proof. Do not close with applause or comfort, close with awareness. These 7 laws are not lessons to memorize, but disciplines to embody. The world cannot defeat a man who cannot be provoked. Those who obey these laws rise quietly, lead naturally, and win without noise. Thus ends the final law, the law of supreme mastery, and with it the secret of winning any confrontation, not by argument, not by pride, but by self-command. For once a man commands himself, every door, every relationship, and every destiny bends in his favor.